You love with depth. You give your all, believe, wait and hold on. But in the end, it feels like you're always alone. Maybe you've felt this before, meeting someone and thinking, this is it. A rare connection, a spark that makes your heart race and awakens hope. It feels special, like something worth fighting for. Even if it hurts, you feel something meaningful is there, something worth holding on to, even if it's hard. But little by little, reality starts to speak. You notice the signs, though you try to ignore them. The affection isn't mutual. The care doesn't match yours. Interest feels half-hearted, inconsistent, and still, you stay. You try to talk, to show up, to prove your worth. You wait for messages, reread old conversations, searching for hidden meaning. You explain the silence with endless theories. You build hopes from crumbs of attention, and every time you think about leaving, something pulls you back. You hold on to the fantasy that if you're just patient enough, kind enough, giving enough, they'll finally see your worth. They'll change. They'll choose you. And that hurts. It hurts because deep down, you're trying to fill a space alone that was meant to be shared. You're giving yourself to someone who isn't giving anything back, pouring out everything and getting almost nothing. But even if you know it in your mind, something stronger holds you there. As if letting go would mean losing something precious, even if that something was never truly real. Even if it only existed in your mind, in your longing, in your projection. And you ask yourself, why do I hold on? Why do I keep choosing people who don't choose me? Why do I give so much where there's no return? Sometimes you blame yourself. You think it's neediness, that something's wrong with you, that maybe you should let go, be more rational, stop expecting so much. But it's not that simple. This pattern of loving those who don't love you back isn't just about choices. It's about something deeper, something older, something you might not have named yet. It started long before any relationship, and now it repeats itself quietly like a loop. And in that cycle, you start to believe you have to earn love. You learn to settle for less and call it enough. You confuse emotional intensity with true connection. You romanticize absence and find reasons to excuse pain. It's like being trapped in an invisible prison. And the worst part? Sometimes it feels familiar, because love that hurts can resemble the kind of affection you once learned to accept. Maybe you were taught that love comes with effort, that you must shape yourself, stay quiet, try harder. That love is something to work for, not something that flows freely and mutually. And when you meet someone who doesn't give you what you need, your heart recognizes the pattern. It's uncomfortable, but familiar, painful, yet strangely known. So you stay. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because deep down you believe that's the love you deserve. Somehow the absence, the doubt, the effort feels like home. But the truth is this: love shouldn't hurt like this. Loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself, shrinking to fit, begging someone to stay. Maybe you're tired. Maybe it's time to look at all of this with more honesty and with more compassion, because the problem isn't that you love too much. The real issue is forgetting to love yourself first. If this cycle feels all too familiar, if you've lived it again and again, maybe it's time to break it. Not by cutting people off harshly or blaming yourself for having loved, but by slowly starting to understand why you cling to those who can't give you what you truly need. And, more importantly, why a part of you still believes you must fight to be chosen. The key to breaking the cycle was never in the other person. It's always been in you. Carl Jung once said that what you don't recognize within yourself, you project onto others. This is especially true in relationships. The way you love didn't just appear, it was built, piece by piece, word by word, moment by moment. From a young age, you were taught, through words but mostly through examples, what love looks like, what to expect from it, how much you should give, how much you should endure. and how often you should stay silent to feel accepted. Maybe love in your childhood came with effort. Maybe you learned that to be seen you had to be good, be strong, cause no trouble, make others proud. Maybe affection came with conditions. And even if those conditions were subtle, they shape the way you understand love. So what happens? As you grow up, you seek that same kind of connection without even realizing it, because what you experienced as love becomes your internal template, familiar, recognizable. And it's not just family, it's the culture too. We're constantly told that love has to hurt, that loving alone is normal, that if you fight hard enough, love will come as a reward. How many times have you seen it in movies, songs, soap operas? Someone chasing after someone who ignores them, and in the end they win their love. How many stories romanticize abandonment? How many praise the one who gives everything, even when they're ignored? How often is destiny used to justify one-sided love? That kind of story seeps into your mind like it's normal, and without realizing it, you start reenacting the same script. You accept too little. You explain away everything. You wait for signs in the absence of presence. And the more you believe that true love requires pain, the more stuck you become. Deep down, you start confusing pain with depth, silence with mystery, indifference with attraction, and that takes you further from real love, the kind built on presence, balance, and mutual care. The world teaches you to love like it's a battle, like you have to win, like one day they'll finally change and give you what you deserve. But that's a fantasy, just an echo of a deeper collective wound. Freedom begins when you realize that real love isn't begged for, it's shared. And now that you see this pattern isn't random, the question shifts. It's no longer, why does this always happen to me? It becomes, what inside me is still seeking to be healed through someone else. That's the turning point. Because once you recognize the pattern, your pain stops feeling like punishment and starts looking like a mirror. A mirror that shows where you're still chasing love to save you, to reward you, to fix a story from long ago that never really healed. And you're not alone in this. So many people go through the same pain, the same confusion, the same cycle, meeting someone, falling fast, idealizing, giving too much, noticing the distance, and still holding on. Sometimes for months, sometimes for years. But why is it so hard to let go? Because deep down you're not just chasing a relationship, you're trying to prove something, that you're enough, that you're worthy of love, that you matter. You're trying, maybe for the 1,000th time, to heal the old wound of abandonment that once defined you, even if you're not fully aware of it. And until that comes into the light of awareness, the cycle continues. But awareness isn't magic, it's a practice. So let's talk about what you can actually do in real life to begin shifting this. The first step is honest observation. Take a quiet moment, no rush, and ask yourself, what exactly draws me to this person? What am I trying to feel through them? What part of me feels seen in this connection? Why does it hurt so much when they pull away? Is this truly about them, or about what they symbolize to me? Maybe you'll realize it's not the person that keeps you hooked, but the way you feel when you're around them. The hope, the emotional rush, the longing to be chosen, the relief of not feeling alone. But if that feeling only exists because of someone else, maybe it was never truly yours. And that's when the most important practice begins. Stop chasing answers in someone else and start listening to what this says about you. One simple way to do this is to write. Yes, write. No filters, no goals, no need to sound perfect. Just write. Sit down and let it out. Put on paper everything that's moving inside you. The anger, the hurt, the fear, the attachment, the confusion. Write as if you're speaking to the part of you that keeps going back to those who hurt you. You can even start like this. I know you just wanted to be chosen. I know you're tired of trying, but now I'm here, I'm listening, and I want to learn how not to leave you behind again. This kind of writing can open doors you never expected. It may reveal that what you called love was really neediness, that the longing was actually a hunger for validation, that the passion was a desperate attempt to return home, to yourself. Another helpful practice is to notice how you react when the other person pulls away. Do you panic? Feel like the ground is slipping beneath you? Believe you won't be able to move on? These reactions are clues. They show your emotional safety still depends on someone else, that you measure yourself through someone else's eyes, that you need their response to feel real. But the truth is, you are already whole. You don't need to be desired to exist. You don't need validation to have value. You don't need to be chosen to feel complete. And every time you find yourself chasing, returning, or waiting again, pause and ask, what part of me is trying to be heard right now? Is this pain really about them, or about the part of me that was never cared for? These kinds of questions change everything, because little by little you realize that what truly hurts isn't the loss of the other person. It's the inner emptiness they awaken, the old wound they press on, that deep-rooted feeling of not being enough that has lived inside you for so long. And then a new path begins to unfold, one that doesn't depend on anyone else, one that doesn't need instant reciprocity. It begins with a single step, returning to yourself. This doesn't mean you have to stop loving. It means loving with awareness, without abandoning yourself, without begging, without forgetting who you are. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're already at that point. The point of being tired of repeating the same patterns. The point where you start choosing with clarity. The point where you begin to hold yourself, even on the days when longing aches and the nights feel painfully empty. Because in the end, it's not just love you're longing for. You want to be seen, to be truly recognized, to be accepted exactly as you are. And that begins with you. Maybe the pain you're feeling right now is simply the closing chapter of an old cycle, the pain of ending a pattern, the pain of no longer looking outside for what only exists within. And that pain is not the end, it's the beginning. Often the love we feel isn't really about the person. It's about what they represent, what they awaken in us, what they stir deep inside. They become a mirror, and the reflection we see there isn't always about them, but about a forgotten part of ourselves. That's why you can fall deeply for someone you barely know, or someone who doesn't treat you the way you deserve. Because what pulls you in isn't who they are, but what they represent. That person becomes a doorway for your unconscious to express something hidden, an old desire, an unresolved fear, an emptiness you've been avoiding. Then you start to believe that this connection has a deeper meaning, that it's special, that it's the love of your life. But in truth, they're just awakening parts of you that had been asleep. There's a moment that comes after awakening, when everything still feels unclear. You know you don't want to repeat the same patterns. You've realized that what you thought was love was actually a search to feel whole. You've seen that the other person can't give you what you hoped for, and yet the pain still lingers. This is the space in between, the time of crossing over. You're no longer in the old, but not yet in the new. You're not stuck in that relationship anymore, but you don't feel fully free either. You don't believe their promises anymore, but sometimes you still miss them. You start pulling away. Yet quietly, part of you hopes they'll chase after you. It's a space of uncertainty, of longing, of discomfort, of rebuilding. And in that in-between space, everything feels more raw. Old memories rush back. Songs take on new meanings. The emptiness feels sharper. You start looking at your life and asking, who am I without this pain that was always with me? Because as much as it hurt, that pain became part of your routine. It filled your days. It gave your story a shape. And now that it's fading, silence appears, and silence can be scary. This is the moment when many people turn back. They reopen old conversations, look for distractions, return to relationships that had already ended, not because they want to, but because they haven't yet learned how to hold space for the new self that's emerging. But it's in that very space where something sacred begins. It's where you reconnect with your presence, your truth, your new voice. It's where you start to rebuild a relationship with who you truly are, without the layers of neediness, without the fears disguised as love, without the old scripts of emotional sacrifice. This journey has no map. Each step is discovered as you take it. There's no formula, no rush, no pressure to already be okay. There's just one commitment: not to abandon yourself again, even on the days when longing tightens your chest, even on the nights when the urge to go back feels overwhelming, even when the emptiness screams and the other person seems like the answer. Remember, the other person was only a mirror. What you've been searching for has always been inside you, and now, maybe for the first time, you're truly ready to find it. It's as if your soul is whispering, "Hey, pay attention. What you feel for this person says more about you than it does about them." And this is where the idea of emotional projection begins. When you don't acknowledge certain qualities, needs, strengths, or wounds within yourself, you project them onto others, especially those you love. And that projection is powerful because it's fueled by emotion, fantasy, and idealization. You begin to see in that person all the things you've lost sight of in yourself. Maybe they represent your freedom, your boldness, your sensitivity. Maybe they remind you of the parent you wished you had. Maybe they simply awaken the hope of one day being loved the way you truly need. And through that, they become a symbol, a reflection of the part of you that longs to reconnect. Jung called this anima and animus, inner figures that represent elements of our unconscious psyche. When someone touches those inner images, the emotional response is intense. You're not just falling for the person, you're falling for what they awaken in you. That's why the love feels so intense, so consuming, so hard to let go of. But that intensity isn't always healthy, because the more you project, the less you see the other person for who they truly are. And the more you lose sight of yourself, you start justifying toxic behaviors, romanticizing emotional distance, accepting crumbs as if they were emotional feasts. And all of this happens in the name of a love that's often just an unconscious attempt to find yourself. Yes, to find yourself. Because the love you seek in others may actually be the love you've been missing from yourself. The validation you never received, the inner child still waiting to be chosen, and now repeating that story in every relationship. And the most painful realization is that often you don't really want the other person. You want the feeling they give you, the sense of belonging, the validation, the excitement, the warmth. You want what, deep down, you feel you've lost within yourself. And so when they leave, it feels like you're losing more than just the person. It feels like you're losing a piece of yourself, because they were carrying that symbol for you. But this loss can be the beginning of healing, because Jung also said, "What is not brought to consciousness appears in our lives as fate." If you don't realize that you're projecting, you'll keep thinking it's bad luck in love. You'll keep reliving the same stories with different people. You'll keep waiting to be chosen by someone without realizing that it's you who needs to choose yourself first. In this context, the pain of rejection isn't just about being turned away by the other person. It's about reliving your own self-neglect. Every time you chase after someone who doesn't love you, a part of you feels validated by repeating what's familiar. It becomes like an emotional, hypnotic cycle. Familiar, yet destructive. But when you bring this to consciousness, everything changes. You begin to recognize the patterns, to see what truly attracts you, to understand why you keep going back, to distinguish the real other from the symbolic other. And little by little, you begin making decisions not based on need but on truth. It's as if the projection is a symbolic call from your soul. Look inside, because deep down the person you love so much may simply be showing you what you need to rediscover within yourself. And real love doesn't begin when someone chooses you. It begins when you stop abandoning yourself in order to be loved. You loved with intensity. You waited, insisted, dreamed. And in the end, you were left with silence, with the absence of the other, with the pain of not being chosen once again. But now, maybe for the first time, you're starting to understand that what hurt the most wasn't just their absence, it was the absence of yourself, the quiet abandonment of who you are. Every time you placed someone else at the center of your world, and recognizing this hurts, but it also frees you. Because when you stop looking outside for what can only be cultivated inside, something begins to change. Slowly, deeply. You begin to return home. Longing may still come. Memories may visit you. But now you have awareness. And that changes everything. Now you know you can feel without losing yourself. You can remember without going back. You can love without abandoning yourself. Carl Jung once said, "What we deny within ourselves appears as fate." Maybe you've lived through these painful relationships as if they were your destiny, as if you were doomed to repeat the same cycle, as if you were always destined to love too much and receive too little. But now maybe you can see it all with new eyes and realize that these encounters, even the painful ones, weren't mistakes. They were mirrors. They were signs. Invitations from your soul to look within, to see how much you've been hiding behind the pain. You're not broken. You're in transition from a love that asked you to prove yourself to a love that begins within, quietly, with one simple act: respecting what you feel, honoring what you need, staying by your side, even when no one else will. This is where everything changes. Because true love doesn't begin when someone sees you. It begins when you finally see yourself. When you realize you don't have to chase after those who ignore you. When you choose not to insist on those who don't choose you. When you understand that what made you suffer was the echo of an old story. One that you now have the power to rewrite. You don't need to know what the next chapter will look like. You don't need all the answers. You just need to take one real step toward yourself, and that step you've already taken by listening this far, by feeling everything you've felt, by allowing yourself to recognize that, even through the pain, you deserve more. More presence, more truth, more reciprocity, and most importantly, more self-love. Because sometimes, what feels like a loss is just life pushing you back to what's true. And truth never asks you to shrink. Truth begins where fantasy ends. If this message resonated with you, if at any point you felt like the video was speaking to your story, then leave a sign in the comments. Write, "I choose to return to myself." That way, we'll know that this reflection found its echo on the other side of the screen, and that there's a soul awake, walking this path. If you want to continue this journey with us, with depth, truth, and no quick fixes, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every video is an invitation to return to yourself, with more clarity, more awareness, and more courage.